Hello, and welcome to a very special BFF.
We're your hosts. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Joe.
And of course, this is when our cats decide.
They've been good like all day. They only gave us any trouble during, fan friction. I had to lock them up for a little bit. And
now everybody is singing a chorus of meow.
Yeah, the sound of their people.
Anyway.
So, as you probably guessed from the title, we're going to talk about a very iconic and quintessential film of the black and white era, Citizen Kane.
Indeed we are, and we'd like to say a special hi to Billy in the chat.
Bill's the only one here yet. Thank you for showing up, Billy.
This is our earlier time, so...
It is.
All right, so let's get to it.
Let's get started.
All right, so Citizen Kane was the only choice for this week's BFF because, A, there was only one round of movies.
Yep.
And you had seen Casablanca and...
I grew up on Casablanca.
And Young Frankenstein, but you had never seen this movie.
Frankenstein.
I am Frankenstein. He says it in the movie.
No.
Yes, he does.
Hey, Tom.
You missed the part.
Tom Zambino's here with us. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. As we were saying, this was the one and only choice because Joe had never seen it. I have seen this movie dozens of times because in college I wrote a paper about the deep focus cinematography, which I talked about on the fan friction, but I did not get a good grade on the paper. I'd just like to say hello to the other Tom as well. We've got two Toms here, so that's pretty awesome.
We got twice the Tom of other channels.
Yes. Anyway, so we had to choose a paper for my history of cinema class, and you could write about any movie, and they just wanted you to talk about some aspect of it. So I was like, okay, well, Citizen Kane is the #1 film on the American Film Institute list of like the best films. I've never seen this. So I'll write about the deep focus cinematography. Well, apparently that wasn't an original enough idea, which makes sense because lots of people have talked about it. So I got like knocked some points on my paper, but like the paper was written well enough and I didn't plagiarize anything because I cited all my sources.
Right.
So like I was mad that I got like a lower grade, but like I could see why. It's like, okay, like you wanted something more original and I didn't do that. But yeah, I'm still bitter 10 years later.
Telling the tone of your voice.
Yes, I was not like a huge fan of that film professor. He meant well, but just his style wasn't what I liked.
I'm sorry, I had to be careful. There is about to be a cat assault occurring.
We got some more people joining with us. We got Kimber and Cal. So, getting a little fuller house. In here, you're going to go beat a cat?
I'm going to go at least remove them from the situation.
He's not really going to hurt any cats.
No.
He's just going to... remove them from the living room. But yeah, still bitter about that paper. I have that somewhere on a drive, but who knows where all of that has ended up. But yeah, it was a fun show today. We'll get talking about some characters and some other stuff in the movie when Joe gets back, because it's not like we're doing a live show or anything. And now I'm just having to tap dance around while I'm waiting for Joe to get back. Fun times. Oh, thank you, Cal. I got my hair done at the Renaissance Festival. We went yesterday for a friend's wedding. But we like to go to the Renaissance Festival all the time anyway. I mean, not all the time, but every year.
At least once a year.
Yeah.
The Texas Renaissance Festival, the largest in the country, from what I am to understand.
Yes. All right, so let's get back to talking about Citizen Kane so that we can truly make this a Citizen Kane of BFF, as Billy said earlier. So there's lots of different characters in this movie, of course. The movie itself is more of a non-linear narrative, but we'll get to more of that in a moment. So one of the main characters, kind of the through line in this movie, is a reporter, Jerry Thompson, who we don't really see a whole lot of in the movie itself. We kind of see him in the shadows. He's kind of the guy, he's the one sitting down and he has glasses. And he's been tasked with finding out what Rosebud,
Kane's last words
were. And so he's the one, he's going around and trying to interview all of the people closest to Kane.
He is the closest thing we can describe to a protagonist of our film. Sort of.
And then we meet Kane's parents in one of these vignettes, and I always found that this part was a little disconcerting. Like, why did they have to send him away? It didn't make a lot of sense to me, especially on the rewatch. And so his mom is sitting down with another character that we'll talk about in a moment. His dad is very upset that the mom is giving the boy away. And then we can see with some of the really cool cinematography that young Kane is playing in the background. And the screen capture is not as great, but when you actually watch this part in the movie, you can actually see everything in focus, and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the Guardian who we just saw in the previous picture sitting down, Walter Parks Thatcher, who is, literally like the benefactor, and he's supposed to be helping Kane. And then eventually he helps Kane acquire this newspaper, but then Kane starts slamming all of his interests in the paper. So like they do not end on a positive note. And then here's Mr. Charles Foster Kane himself, played by Orson Welles. Orson Welles was 25 years old when he made this movie. He co-wrote the screenplay. He directed it. He starred in it. He had final cut rights, which was very rare for a new director. He had also been famous in other areas of media before, particularly the broadcast of War of the Worlds, I believe it was, where people went into hysterics.
Which that's apparently an incredibly overblown rumor as well. Where like some people did, but the bulk of people were like, I don't even get this.
Yes, and apparently, like, he looks really good in this picture. He said that they spent more time making him look handsome than they did making him look old. Nice. Because people would often like make fun of him when he got older, that like he had such like a horrible aging process. But apparently, he's got like some hairline stuff added and some other temporary facelifts to make him super handsome. But yeah, the young Kane's definitely a catch, I would think. We have his friend and also a reporter for the Inquirer, which I think I spelled wrong, but too late to fix that now. Jed Leland, and he is kind of the entertainment reporter, and they're really good friends. And it's interesting to see their relationship in this movie because as Kane rises in power and prominence, he becomes more corrupt, and we can see that his friend is like more and more upset with him about the turns that he's making. Played beautifully by Joseph Cotten, which I believe this was Joseph Cotten's first movie. This is a lot of people's first movie.
Right.
And then Mr. Bernstein, who has no first name in this movie, is another employee of Kane.
Should be Leonard.
That's Yeah, I guess. Yes, that would work. Never mind, I'm tired. Don't try to trick me.
I'm not. I'm just trying to be fun. I'm trying to make this a Citizen Kane, a BFF.
Well, as the cats are like literally, there's a cat playing with a shoe now. This is going to be the Citizen Kane of cat shenanigans, at least.
Cat-nanigans.
Anyway, this is Mr. Bernstein, an employee of Kane who was loyal throughout, no matter what horrible changes and morals that Kane goes through. This guy is always at his side, and he's a little bit older than Kane. This is like a flashback scene that we see of him.
Yep.
Kane is married to two different women over the course of this movie, which again is a non-linear narrative. His first wife is the nephew of the president, Emily Monroe Norton Kane, and definitely, it's kind of like a whirlwind romance between the two of them. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that's portrayed later. And then his second wife, Susan Alexander Kane, they meet on the street, and he goes to her apartment with her. She has a toothache, and things get a little untoward, and they get married, and he's trying to make her an opera singer, and she cannot sing at all. Like, it is pretty terrible.
She can sing better than I can. I don't get the whole thing. Like, we were watching
She's singing
this.
out of key, apparently, or out of her vocal range.
We were watching it, and I'm just like, she sounds fine to me. Maybe I just don't have an ear for music.
All right, before we get into it, Grimes, let's check back in with our chat. See what people are saying.
Billy is incredibly impressively comparing this to the whole Facebook stuff,
like the social network
in general, because based on true events, and it's pretty good. I always enjoy, like, as a thought exercise, taking existing movies or stories and like readapting them for a modern telling. because if you are to make remakes of movies, they need to be like, they need to make sense and not just like shot for shot remake of a movie. So if we were to look at a remake of Citizen Kane, I think going with that or like Amazon or Google or something as the backdrop as opposed to just a newspaper empire would be a fantastic way to go. That's a really good catch, Billy. Kimber brought up her patented line that we'll speak of later.
Yes, dusty old movie, and then you had
Tom Zambino with the King of the Hill reference.
Dusty old movie full of green dust.
Enjoy that.
That's pretty great. So let's get to our gripes.
As a Texan, I appreciate the King of the Hill references.
All right, so we didn't actually have too many gripes for this movie. It is a little long.
It is, but you know,
particularly this starts off with this newsreel, news on the march, and it's kind of a parody of those newsreels, and also parodying the way that the Times magazine does their obituaries. I had read about that when I was doing some research about the movie, but this goes on forever. Oh my gosh, I thought it was like
the first 10-12 minutes of the movie.
It felt like in half an hour. Like it felt like forever. And we watched the 70 anniversary restoration. So I was like, did they add something in this? Like I don't remember it being this long when I saw it in 2006. Yeah. It just felt like, okay, I was like, when is it over? I don't remember this. What's going on? But it just went on for a long time. I think they could have cut that down a little. But
it's not just for me. It's not just that it's long. It's that it literally tells you the blueprint of the film. It's gonna tell. It basically gives you step by step what happens and all the things we see and experience, with the exception of the beginning where we see like Kane's youth and like what happened for him to get adopted and stuff like that, or whatever. I still don't understand what happened with young Kane that caused him to become separated from his parents. Nice. Yeah.
Some other gripes that you had mentioned, and like this is actually like a cool shot, but sometimes it was really hard to hear conversations
between either music or other ambient sounds. There was no focus on the actual like people speaking in the scene.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was just like a problem with like a restoration or whatever, because I don't remember that being an issue the first time I saw it, but I might have not noticed it that time. But it really did stand out where it's like you're trying to hear like what they're saying and you can't. And again, this is a really cool shot with, you can see it's hard on the screen cap, but like in the reflection of the window, Kane is dancing around and.
It's in relatively good focus too in the actual movie.
Yeah, Leland and Bernstein are having a conversation. This is at a party that they're having. But yeah, we didn't really have too many gripes about this movie overall.
Yeah, I mean, when you take into account when it was made and everything else, it's good. And we'll check it out in the chat real quick. There's a lot of talk about King of the Hill.
Yeah, when Tom brought up that thing, and then Kimber was talking about how that she wasn't making a reference when she said they were dusty and old. Like that's just how she really feels.
No, totally get that. I'm just glad Tom Zambino went to the same place I went when he saw that and went like, oh, dusty old bones full of green dust. And it's devolving into a lot of King of the Hill talk. Kimber had mentioned King of the Hill is very funny. It is.
It's so accurate, too.
As Texans, we can watch that and go like, yeah, it's like that. It's kind of like that.
If they ever do a King of the Hill revival, we have total dibs on the recap show and like podcast
we have a name
or whatever.
And everything.
Yeah, we already picked it out. We're not going to spoil it here, but we totally will do.
We've talked for at least the past 6 or 7 months about doing a King of the Hill like podcast.
Yes, because we love King of the Hill so much.
We really do.
Anyway, let's talk about Citizen Kane.
The thing you're actually here for. Not our hot takes on King of the Hill, our propane hot tanks, our Blue Flame of Valor hot tanks.
Those are some
our hot tanks.
Hot tanks.
On King of the Hill.
All right, so one of the things that we talked about was the cinematography. I really love the opening of the movie, and I had forgotten about the shots as that we were on Xanadu, Kane's palace. It's like it's kind of made me think of like Howard Hughes and all those other like super rich like tycoon types where they are also a little bit off kilter, and they just like keep building these palaces that they never finish.
My thoughts went to the Neverland Ranch.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar principle.
Yeah, because
especially when he talks about there's like a fully stocked zoo, and it's the biggest zoo in the Western Hemisphere, and all sorts of crap like that.
And of course, William Randolph Hearst, who Charles Foster Kane is modeled after a lot, in addition to other people, also has like his palace, which I think is San Simeon, but this is Xanadu, and it just the way it's set up, like I felt like I was watching the beginning of a horror movie because it's very eerie and creepy.
Yeah.
And we see the little monkeys; they're so adorable.
Tom, that's called Xandar. Oh my god.
There's a lot of cool shots like we had talked about earlier with reflections. This isn't a reflection of the snow globe that falls down, and we see that they just don't show us a nurse coming in. They do it in a unique way by showing her coming in this reflected object instead of doing a standard shot.
And seeing the shot in motion is really intense too, because there's like this fantastic like fisheye effect that it does where it zooms out when she walks in to see the whole scene, and it's really impressive.
And again, talking about using reflections instead of having a standard shot where they're looking at this is in front of their newspaper with a 26,000, circulation, which their rival had like over twice, like more than twice that circulation. Instead of just showing them in front of it, we see them in the reflection of their window. And I just thought that was a really cool technique that I don't remember seeing in a lot of films prior to this release.
Yeah.
And here's another cool one with mirrors after his second wife leaves him, and he like goes on this rage through her room. We see him walking through the hall and walking by, and we see his reflection in all these mirrors.
It really drives home the sense of loneliness. Like, this is one room, but you get the feeling that this room represents the entire palatial estate.
And even the other shots in Xanadu, everything feels so big and broad, and they're just these tiny people in this magnificent palace, and like all of his staff are like he's walking by them in the scene previous to this, and they just are like silent, because what do you say like when your boss flips out on you on something?
Daddy's fighting.
Another really cool sequence I liked is they had talked about this rival newspaper, the Chronicle, and like this is a picture of like all of the writers. That's why their circulation is so good, because they have the best. And then it does a cool transition where like it does the same shot, and then like Wells comes in, and it's like he stole all of these people, and it makes it look like the photograph has come alive with the way that the editing is done. And he's taken this like new picture of them. Now he's got them on his staff, and their readership is way more than what the Chronicle was.
Yep.
Another cool thing that Orson Welles does with transitions, like the interviewer is talking to Leland when he's an old man. I love the cool little visor that he has, because apparently the wig wasn't fitting right, so they had to throw that on there.
Nice.
And it did like a cool where he's still talking, and then it's like dissolving into the next scene, which I thought was really clever.
Better than Starlight.
And this was one that
one of my favorite scenes is when she walks out on him. She walks out the door of her room and then walks across the hall, opens another door and walks through it, but you don't see anything about like what's through that other door she walked through. There's no detail. So it's almost like she's just leaving to this black void. And the camera, again, a still shot doesn't do the scene justice because it's pulling out while she's doing this. So it's creating this massive sense of like, as she's leaving, his loneliness is expanding dramatically, and it's impressive. His isolation.
Another scene that I thought was really cool, this is towards the end of the movie, and at first I was like, is this a city? But no, these are like all of the possessions that he has, because Kane is obsessed with buying all of these artifacts, like, statues and other...
He must be top man.
It did kind of make me think of that too, but it looks almost like it's like a little city of all of these artifacts that he's been collecting, and but just buying and buying things to fill the empty void in his heart.
Top men.
And then one of the last scenes in the movie where like no one's figured out this whole rosebud thing, and these people are like just tossing stuff into the incinerator, and you see the little sled from his childhood, and it's really cool how like I guess the resin is burning off of it because it can't be snow because it's not the same time period. And then we know that like they're like the evidence of any truth is like this burning.
It's literally going up in smoke.
Yeah, burning away. And there has been some controversy over the ending of this movie because in the beginning of the movie, it's like, well, who heard them say Rosebud? Because the girl walks in after the thing falls. So that people kind of talk about that as being a flip-flop.
But there's a scene like right before he goes on the rampage and stuff, or like after he goes on the rampage, when he picks up the snow globe, he says it. Like that, and he may have said it more than once. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
That he said it, and it was the last thing any of his servants heard him say. And then he says it again in the final scene to kind of drive it home. I don't know.
I just always assumed that maybe like a way that you could justify it is off camera because it seemed like one of his butlers was with him all the time. So even though they didn't show him, like maybe somebody else was in the room.
Yeah.
Obviously we can't resurrect Orson Welles or Greg Toland or anybody from the grave to ask them, but I know that's a complaint that people have about the movie.
I feel like, I know when we were watching it, I felt that way early on, and then later on was very much like, okay, no, that makes sense. So let's check in with the chat again.
Yeah.
You find people.
We want to scroll back up to see if we missed anything important, because
Lots to talk about Xanadu.
Yeah, Xanadu, the Olivia Newton-John movie. I've never seen that. The camera work is very impressive in this movie. We didn't even talk about like half of it just because it doesn't capture it well on the screenshot.
It's not even just that. It's like this is a 2-hour movie, and like 85% of this movie is impressive screen work. Mm-hmm. It's like either camera work or editing cuts or however they do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of like shots where it's like a low angle, and it makes everybody feel like much more gigantic, including a lot of shots of Kane to really show off his power.
In contrast to that, like one of the shots when he's talking to his guardian, when he's really young. We actually have the shot in ours on his introductory shot. Mm-hmm. It's him sitting in his desk talking to the guy, but the guy's up here and the camera's up here, making Kane almost look like he's the small one in this circumstance, but it's like a David and Goliath situation. At least that's the way it felt, and that's really impressive. Tom Zambino's got to head out. Bye, Tom. Pretty sure you've already left, but still. A lot of Black Lodge commentary from Cal. Of course, the Twin Peaks. Tom
that already left said that if we do have a podcast about King of the Hill and the works, he's very much in. So
very good. But yeah, see what else.
Are you just reading the chat?
Yeah, I'm just checking the chat for a second.
All right, there are a few more things in the movie that I wanted to talk about that I pulled screenshots for. So not only is this movie known for its cinematography, but the social commentary is also really strong in this movie, and that part still holds up really well. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things, and here's like an iconic shot of just, him doing that clapping scene. Everybody has a GIF of this on Twitter.
Totally, everyone uses it.
And just like the intensity of the shadows and the shot, and like you can tell that he knows that this is when he's watching his wife at the opera, and it just did not go well.
The modern equivalent of this would be the "I've made a terrible mistake."
Yeah, and then like he even built the opera house for her, which I thought I don't remember if I put that picture in here. But it's like, like she'll be singing at the Metropolitan Opera, and then it's like Kane builds opera house because she's not good enough to go there.
Side note, Billy brought up the Shia gif, and if you put those two gifs side by side,
it's the same thing.
It is literally the same thing. He's the shading on his face is the same. It's in a massive opera house and all sorts of other stuff.
Yeah, so. And then Tom from Odd Shape Panels saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So the cinematography is really cool, but also the social message. And so this sequence kind of combines both of them. This is with his first wife, Emily, after they've gotten married. And you can see the table, they're like right next to each other. He has a smile on his face. She's smiling. But then they do like this cool montage. And this movie has so many awesome montages. Mm-hmm. But this one's pretty cool because we see them where they're not in frame together. And by the end of it, like we can see that they are like far apart and they're both reading the newspaper. And a shot before this wide shot, we see that she is reading the rival newspaper of her husband.
The Chronicle. Showing
that their relationship is so strained at this point. And this is probably one of the most iconic, not iconic sequences in the movie, but just something that when people talk about Citizen Kane, this is something that is often brought up. It's such a good storytelling. Instead of saying like they hate each other, he shows you the distance between them.
It's interesting because it makes me think of a scene in Family Guy when Peter and Chris are watching live or animals, wildlife or something, and mentions that like, oh look, Chris, you can see a family of wasps. And then it cuts to this family sitting at the dinner table eating. It's a mother, a father, and a daughter. And like every time one of them says something, like the father will say something and the mother's like, and then she'll say something and the father's like, that's kind of what it makes me think of.
Later on, another social message that I thought was pretty interesting. So he meets Susan Alexander on the street. She invites him up, and he's like, well, these kind of things are best handled behind closed doors. And he's closing the door. Shading is very dark to indicate bad things could happen. But then she's like, I'm sorry, my landlady says that if I have a gentleman in here, my door needs to be open. But you know that he was going to try to pull some horrible shenanigans, despite the fact that, he's married with a child. Just kind of made me think of things. Another huge theme in this movie was the prominence of the news and the misinformation, the yellow journalism because of the setting. So part of this takes place during the Spanish-American War. And so here we have, he's talking to someone, and another correspondent, Mr. Bernstein, has like been talking to someone on the phone that's in Cuba, saying that like we're wasting our money here. Like let me come home. I'm tired of writing these prose poems. And he's like, tell him to write the prose poems, and I'll supply the war, which is a direct reference to what William Randolph Hearst said about pictures. You supply the pictures, I'll supply the war.
Yep.
And so that's probably one of the most direct references they could get. I think that they stayed away from pictures because then it would have been too blatant. So I'm just imagining this poor person that's like, your assignment's to write poems about the war. Like that just seemed kind of dorky.
Yep.
But again, if they had said pictures, I think they could have had a great case for libel here instead of, just all the other horrible stuff.
Oh, poetry is supposed to paint a picture.
And then another one, there's been a woman has gone missing, and so then they're fabricating this whole thing about her, like, well, she was probably murdered, and pretend to be a detective and all of these horrible things to try to get a story.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of strong themes of being a little loose with the facts.
A little.
Another strong theme that comes across that's still relevant in our time is like he has these political ambitions. Like he wants to be the president of the United States. And this is a very iconic shot that you've seen parodied in The Simpsons, particularly in I think more than one episode. There's Citizen Kane, which is an election of like it's during, what was it, Clinton and Dole, I don't remember, but Kane and Kodos are the ones that like take control of them. Mr. Burns also ran for governor, so this is highly parodied in those places. And he says like a lot of horrible things about his opponent, including like locking his opponent up in jail and all sorts of stuff that's, highly relevant to things that are going on today. I'm sorry. That's why I'm laughing. Joe's trying to do an impression of the shot. What's wrong with you?
That's enough of that.
Anyway. So yeah, he talks about like when I'm elected, all these things, and then of course it gets found out that Kane has been having an affair with a singer, and singers in quotes.
Yeah,
and so that ends his political ambitions, and that's why his wife leaves him. And he was actually exposed by the candidate that he was trying to make look bad.
Yep.
So that was very interesting.
So we're at that time where we rate this film, and I honestly give it about an 8.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. I feel like the parts that bog it down are like the beginning, as we talked about, and the sound, and those are honestly both glaring enough that it's like 2 1 whole point deductions for me.
All right, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 because I think that the beginning does run a little long. If I had Final Cut, I would cut that down. And then I do think because of that, and then some other things, they could have probably tightened it up in a few places. I do think it runs a little long, but I do think it's a culturally relevant film, and that's one thing that often gets attacked today. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the fan fiction. But like what I've seen people talk about is like, well, that movie's so overrated. It's like, well, it's iconic for a reason. And yeah, it is an old movie, but you can't deny that, it is culturally relevant.
Right.
And so I've had to come to its defense a lot online lately, where it's like, no, like you don't understand. Like this is what set the precedent, and and there are better movies, but I still think it's a really good one.
I agree. My argument for like the only reason I personally feel it's slightly overrated is people talk about like how important it was for cinema, like the cinematography work, the everything about it. I feel is like if this movie didn't do it, another movie eventually would have.
That, and I think that's a fair point to make. But this movie did it.
Yeah, it did, and it did it really well. So.
I mean, I would personally rather watch To Kill a Mockingbird too, Kimber, but I still see that, this, the importance of this movie. And, like, this is definitely not one that I'm like, let's watch Citizen Kane right now. No. But I still think it's a good movie. Now, would I have chosen it to fight for this question? Probably not. I had some different movies I would have chosen.
What would you have chosen?
We'll talk about that at the end. All right, so our question was, what was the greatest black and white film of all time, which is a slight retread of something that we had talked about before on fan fiction. I think the question was worded slightly different. And this is the second time that Citizen Kane has been fought for this type of question, which was chosen by Garrett. Kimber went out of the box with Young Frankenstein only because it's a newer, in this case, compared to the others movie.
Well, and it utilizes the medium as opposed to being limited by the medium.
Yeah, and then Jonathan went with a classic choice of Casablanca, which, again, Citizen Kane and Casablanca are kind of like when you think of like black and white movies, are kind of the first ones that come to mind. And Kimber had called them both out on their choices about this is like the lowest hanging fruit of an answer. And then like her nail in the coffin, or at least like I thought it was a pretty good nail in the coffin that's been brought up several times in the chat. Like you have a dusty old argument about some dusty old movies, and like that's like
it's basically
that's
arguments.
A mic drop.
Everybody, their arguments everyone has. I mean, these movies are movies people have debated to the point where they should be in coffins. That these movies have been debated and argued to death by other people. Kimber
is saying, I watched the fight you did with Brian and Hector before fighting this morning. Were you trying to steal some ideas to help you with Citizen Kane, Kimber? Because if you did, kudos to you.
And yeah, it's when talking about the best of all time, I feel like, and I understand their argument too, because they made the point of like, it is the low-hanging fruit for a reason.
And I know Jonathan had brought up that point that there's a reason why that you pick those things because they really are the best. And he talked about Citizen Kane being a cliched answer, and then Kimber clapped back at that, was like, well, yours is a cliched answer too. Like you can't say that. And Jonathan did say, like, you won't catch me saying that Citizen Kane is bad. But he did talk about the voiceover in the beginning being painfully long. And then some things that Garrett said to try to help him was the fact that it does resonate with today and with the political people we have. That's his quote. Which I can see that argument. Definitely. Especially when we were watching it last night. It was like, oh, wow, this is so relevant. The speech that we had a shot of that I parodied the hat picture perfectly. I mean, it was just like mirrored. We had to pause it like right after the speech, and we were like, oh, God. Yes, it's still happening. Time flows like a river. It does. And so another thing that Garrett said was that it could inspire people to make a difference or to create something. And then he had said he had not heard people argue about that this is anything other than a good movie. And like I've said before, online, especially if you're in any kind of movie fan groups, there is a lot of people that like question the relevance of Citizen Kane. So there are a lot of detractors out there, and people can have their opinion, but if they are just going to say like oh, it's bad, but I've never seen it. That's, and I get that it's like an old movie, and not everybody has the same access, but I truly think that if you're going to say something's bad, like you gotta watch it. But other than that, I mean, it's got a lot of praise, but it does have a lot of detractors. And I thought it was a really good argument, very fierce. Alicia had awarded the point to Jonathan because she felt that he was able to say enough about his movie, but also tear down the other ones. I thought Kimber's arguments about Young Frankenstein were very good. And again, I praise her for her out-of-the-box choice because like those other two movies are so classic, and that's good, but it's also good to see somebody fight for something that you wouldn't expect. And that movie is definitely one that's black and white, helps it in an era where they weren't really making them anymore. And there's two ways to approach these kinds of fights. It's either you go with the passion or you go with the academics. And this is definitely a fight of passion and academics. I could not be passionate about this film. Like, I could not about Citizen Kane. I agree. Like, Kimber fought for Young Frankenstein with a similar tactic that I would. It's a movie she cares about and loves and all that jazz. So. Yeah, like when we did the fight the first time, and because I had thought about arguing for Citizen Kane the very first time just because it is the #1 on the AFI, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm much more passionate about To Kill a Mockingbird, and there's still just as many elements that are culturally relevant. So I was, that's why I probably won, was I was able to establish that. And I didn't say that Citizen Kane was a bad movie. I said it was slow, and that it would doesn't engage today's audiences, which I do think that if you try to watch it today, like, I was really surprised that you liked it because I mean, I like it, but it's not like something that you're going to watch all the time. If we were rating, like we rated the film earlier, if we were rating purely off of how much I enjoyed the film, it would have been much lower. Oh yeah, I could see that. And it's definitely one that is not going to be like a yearly watch for me. Again, I haven't watched it in like 11 years. Yeah, in 11 years. It's kind of like one of those like once is enough movies. Yeah. For a lot of people. I enjoyed the movie. It's a beautiful film. I'm never going to watch it again. Yeah, let's go ahead and check in with the chat before we move on to other things. Lots of talking here about. I want to scroll it up a little in case we missed anything. Scroll down a little. Or scroll back up. I remember seeing the thing that Tom said about emails. Oh yeah, Kane had emails, and it's lower than this. I'm gonna watch Wag the Dog. Tom now wants to watch Wag the Dog again. I haven't seen that movie in years. That's another one where they like fake a whole presidential scandal. Put the candle back. I give it 0 out of 10 Young Frankenstein. That's fair. And Kimber would rather watch To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah, I talked about that before. Brian Hector, she watched your fight with Brian Hector this morning. I mentioned that before. Tom brings up a very valid point. At a certain point,
You may as well avoid these questions if you get the same answers. And yes, and I agree with that entirely.
Or at least
I feel like caveating these questions.
Or at least saying, you know, like
aside from,
especially considering that one had been fought before. I know that we had like some last minute like player changes, so I think that could have impacted it.
There's low hanging fruit, and then there's the standard issue assault rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Like this Citizen Kane is one of those standard issue assault rifles. Like you use it because it works. You don't use it because you care about it. It's there.
What would you have picked?
So I would go a similar route to Kimber. I would choose a newer movie. Because I feel there is an incredibly powerful argument in utilizing black and white as a medium to tell the story as opposed to being restricted by the medium. I don't know really what I would choose. I would probably have to spend a little more time, but I would probably go with something like Clerks.
Yeah, that's good.
Good Night and Good Luck is another powerful choice.
That's one I had thought about talking about before. Billy is saying that Ed Wood could have been used. I think that's a good choice.
Yes.
Because again, like all the ones that we're mentioning are ones that, like Kimber's, like they didn't
have to choose black and white.
Yeah,
they could have shot that film in color. Okay, Clerks had to be in black and white for financial reasons.
Stylistically, though, like those directors made a conscious choice to go, we're going black and white despite what our studio says or whatnot, because black and white is the only medium where we can tell the story. And To Kill a Mockingbird is that way too. Like they did not have to film that in color. Color film was pretty well established when that was released.
Another if it would be allowed is I would choose Logan. Like Logan, the black and white version of Logan was beautiful. Not so much the Mad Max version. It lost something when it lost the color, but Logan was fantastic.
Yeah, you might for that would have to, because that's like a huge trend right now.
Yeah.
Once they start releasing some more, let's desaturate the color, like which like the best movie that was originally
I get that.
Color,
I get
but
that.
now black and white.
I totally get that. I'm just using like if it could get slipped by the judge, that would definitely be one I'd be passionate about because it feels Logan already felt like a Western.
Yeah.
But making it a black and white makes it really feel like that epic Western feel. Like when they're watching Shane in the hotel room, it syncs up even more. There's a beauty to it.
And Billy's saying that he felt that Logan was better in black and white. I thought it was really good. But yeah, Mad Max Fury Road at black and chrome it loses so much.
It's still very good in black and white.
But it loses so much because the colors were so vivid. But yeah, that would be like a fun question or which one would work in black and white, some kind of tweaking of the question.
Yep. So what's next on our collection of stuff?
I think got Twitter next.
Oh yes. We're back on our normal role of
stumping people.
Yeah,
we tried to make it hard this time because the last two times people guessed it the first try.
Billy said Sin City. Sin City is also a really good one.
That would be good.
Like it's got a couple of shots of color.
That was fought in the first time as well.
But the black and white makes those color scenes, what is in color, stand out.
Yeah. So this is our clue. This classic film with themes still is relevant today as they were upon initial release and farewell at the box office despite early critical praise from some media outlets. So I tried to make it one complex sentence, and then media outlets was kind of a subtle clue. Also, I tried to make it look like it was on newsprint and it was typed up like a newspaper.
Yeah.
So that was the clue, and not a lot of people guessed, but we did have some interesting guesses. So like one of the themes that I noticed was people guessing films we had seen. Not that everybody knows every movie that we watch, but I thought it was kind of cute. Like Delisha had guessed Casablanca. Chase had guessed All the President's Men, which is a movie I absolutely love.
It is really good.
Sam had guessed Dr. Dolittle. Holmesy said that he thought Fight Club at first, but do you really consider it a classic, which I personally don't. I think it's one that doesn't hold up as well, which we've talked about on our show before. Delisha also had guessed Gone with the Wind. Ben had guessed Blade Runner, and then Mac had guessed It's a Wonderful Life. And which, again, some of these do work pretty well, and Blade Runner didn't do well at the box office.
It's super culturally relevant.
Yeah.
With the whole,
It's a Wonderful Life didn't do well at the box office, but they played
always
it
relevant.
and they played it every Christmas. So All the President's Men, super relevant, but I don't know about its box office, and then I don't know all of the Casablanca facts, despite the fact that it was bought recently. And then my favorite response was Cal to Kill a Mockingbird. I'm like, really?
Cal, buddy. How much do we talk about that film?
I know, and then it was cute because Delicia's like, remember, it has to be something they haven't seen. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot. And he guessed like 8 other movies.
That's what we kind of figured when you guessed that is like the premise of the show is movies at least one of us hasn't seen. And we both talked about To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. And then somebody else after the fact guessed To Kill a Mockingbird after I had already posted the show stuff. And I just posted a link to movies that me and Nolan had done. He was like, oh crap.
I believe it was Ryan.
Yeah. And then a couple of other good guesses were from Eric Monroe with Shawshank Redemption, and then Eshna Kabir. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. And if
Thanks for guessing.
If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. And she guessed Network by Sidney Lumet, which is one I've always wanted to see but have not seen. And I've never seen Shawshank Redemption.
So somebody get on Network or argue Network by Lumet in fan fiction, and we'll do a BFF.
Yes, we will, because that's another one that I know is highly culturally relevant. I think that's the one where he's like, I'm mad as hell, and I...
Oh, okay.
That one where
I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yes. And then Scott, the Twitter handle Chewbacca Defense, Citizen Kane, which apparently his Twitter, or my Twitter, thought was in Haitian Creole.
Wow.
I don't know why I would think that, but...
That's such a random pull for language, too. Oh, Google. You're so crazy.
Yes. So he was the only one that guessed it right. But our Twitter is based, or our drawing is based off of how, like, you guessing, not that you get it right, because we're never sure if it's something that you'll get right. So I'm going to pull up our random number generator.
Our handy dandy random number generator.
And then
do we want to
we'll show that in a second.
Gotta do the thing.
Yeah, why don't you? While I'm getting that together, why don't you read some more of the chat?
All right, we got some chat stuff here. You know, Tom at first very upset that no one really recognized what Pleasantville is, and then Billy making Tom feel old. Pleasantville's. Okay.
Yeah, Pleasantville's good, but it definitely would not work for this show's round because it does have color, and color eventually comes to Pleasantville.
It's like Brian mentioning high anxiety. Pleasantville is a really good movie. Yep, lots of color brought up already. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's true. Billy bringing up the DVD Bunker, which is another show here on the Tough Network that Brian runs. And it's true. Most of the things Brian has as DVDs, I were unaware were things at all.
Yeah, so he's got tons of stuff that...
I actually have a little love for Pleasantville because of the elements that are like Fallout-ish in it. Tom... where's the rest of the chat? Amanda, current Riverdale. There's basically a lot of talk here about Riverdale as well, but Pleasantville and Sin City and things like that. Fantastic movies all around. And yes, Kimber bringing up that she never gets movies on BFF because we
have the same taste. One day, Kimber.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a backlog of favorite things, and we will pick a movie because you've picked so many good movies that I love that I would love to talk about. So
or movies that we have talked about that were picked for a particular episode of fan fiction, like maybe last week's episode or the last episode of BFF over Snowpiercer, which you can find here at the Tough Channel.
Yeah, where Tom and Kimber were on that episode.
They were.
Yeah, I've always often thought about like we should like go back for some kind of backlog. And do like things that like we absolutely like love and are super passionate about that other people have fought for, even if it's something that we've seen before. So we'll see, because I know fan fiction will be coming to some kind of hiatus soon because So we'll figure that out. I don't know if there'll be pre-recorded backlogs because we have so many time constraints. That's why we're doing this live.
It's less stressful too.
Yes, it's more fun.
Yeah.
Let's go to our generator where I have put everybody's name into a list on my Excel. And so there are 18 of you.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime you guessed whether it was correct or not, just kind of randomly generated or just randomly typed your name on there. So it's already set at 10, so that's the default. So whatever number it lands on, that person will win their choice of sticker that we still have, which I think we still have BFF stickers and Janine's Nubia stickers.
Yep,
so.
and we're going to restock on some other designs. I'm loving her current Steve design.
Yes, I'm hoping that she will make some Toast of London stuff because I really, really want a Tawny Owl iced tea sticker. I would buy that on a shirt. I would buy a laptop case of that. I so want some Tawny Owl iced tea stuff because that is like my favorite joke from that show. If you've never seen Toast of London, you should watch it. It's hilarious.
I'm sure Ashley doesn't miss editing the cat outtakes, Tom.
The cat outtakes I like. Those I thought those were cute too, but definitely the editing constraints.
So, are we ready?
Yes.
Roll that beautiful bean number.
All right, so whoever is number 5, which is Scott, who guessed right.
Wow, that's some serendipity right there.
There you go. So Scott, at the Chewbacca Defense, we will be contacting you to see which sticker that you want. Yeah. So I'm sure he will be so excited about that.
Yeah. So with that, I believe we've done everything we need to do.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of BFF. We are in under an hour, which is always fantastic. So if you excuse us, we have to go on a cross-galaxy adventure to go save, Asgard, the known universe or something. We have to go witness this.
Yes. If you don't get what he means, we're going to go see Thor. So don't spoil Thor.
Please don't.
Anyway, that's us. That's been another episode of BFF. Was it really the Citizen Kane of BFFs? Please leave a comment and let us know.
It's not black and white for one.
I know, but your little Citizen Kane hat. Anyway, we should probably end this somehow.
Yeah.
You should follow us on Twitter if you want to have more shenanigans with us. I'm at @_Mrs. Davis.
I will. I'll message you after, Tom. Sorry, I'm at Drake Masters, as it says here.
Secret chats. I don't like this.
Grow up. And you can also find us at our communal account, Geek to My Nerd, where we just finished our ROM 2064 playthrough. The last chapter, the creators of the game even stepped into the chat and hung out with us for a while, which was a super scary and intense chapter. That game is amazing, by the way. We haven't done a review or anything, but if you want to play a cool adventure game, play ROM 2064. It is magic.
All right, and then hi TJ, you just came in at the very end of the episode, so hopefully you'll go back and rewatch it once it all processes. We're happy that you were able to join us, even if it was just for a second.
Sorry, buddy.
That's how it happens. We did our show at an earlier time today to accommodate us going to the movies, so we should just end this thing because we keep talking and rambling.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to do something where we cut it off in the middle